Hi everyone, this is Dr. Alana, and today's 15-minute conversation is about how diagrams are currently being used. And I kind of broaden that to be diagrams and illustrations, how they're being used in research, specifically in the research that we see being published in a dissertation format. But what holds true in the dissertation holds true across the sciences. So our discussion today first I'm going to show you a number of examples, and I'm going to glance through them, showing you where they are, and there are slides in the handouts, and those slides will allow you to actually pull up the documents that I took the diagrams from. And then a little bit about how you go about finding or doing that. If you're up against the barrier of you really want to use a picture to explain the 1,000 words that you are writing, how do you go about starting that? And then we'll talk a little bit Q&A and what's up this summer. Okay, so let's start with diagrams. These are all current, taken from dissertations that I pulled down, as you can see, from ProQuest Open, and the links are live, I think, or at least cut and pastable, and they're in the handouts. Okay, so the first thing is that let's just mention that there are times when a picture, you can find a picture or you'll see a picture where you need to illustrate something very specifically. This is a dissertation about a particular artist and how he used figures in social environments, and it's a complex topic. And throughout, there was a section that showed all the figures that this author would be referring to. Diagrams can also be used when you're trying to explain something that has a lot of complexity. If then this happens here, this happens here, here's how it goes together, here's how they sort out in groups, those kinds of things can often be done in a diagram to help the reader, your reader, understand the complexities you're talking about. They can also demonstrate difference, as in this one way of doing it ends up here, and this other way of doing it or approaching it ends up in a different place. They can also be used to illustrate a process. So something happens, it affects this, and then this, and then this, and then this, and those processes play off of each other, and they end up with specific changes, in this case molecularly. And they can be used to demonstrate a problem. So this one is about how in broadcasting, if you have signals being sent out by a similar source at the same time, two different signals, there's a couple of different ways that they can interact, one that's better than another, or there's a problem with both. And then, of course, one that you've seen me talk about as I help people get through the dissertation process is the use of diagram to demonstrate the conceptual and or theoretical framework of your document. Diagrams can also be used to tell a story. In this case, how neurons interact with drugs and at what points those drugs affect the body in whatever ways. And sometimes a picture really is better than 1,000 words. In this case, it's different instruments playing similar notes at a slightly different time period, so they create a trill that we can actually imagine when we see the score. So, as I said, I really hope that some of you here, and you might use either the chat or www.wooclap. Let me type this in, www.wooclap.com/15 minutes is a place where you can put up an anonymous question. Or if you just want to say, this is what I wanted to do, or this is what I was hoping to do with diagrams, we could chat more about it. And if you don't mind your name being on it, you can just put that in the chat. If you're diagramming relationships and you're just thinking about, how do I do this? How do I have these kind of ideas in my head, and I might put them down on paper, and I might put down circles and make arrows, but how do I formalize that? And how do I make it a diagram that other people will understand? Well, my solution is to hunt for pictures that work for what you want to do. So if possible, a picture, so you might be in a lab situation, you might be in other situations, and if there is something there where you can literally pull out a published something, or take a picture, that's always best. However, most of us can't do that. I certainly have never been able to. So then my solution is to find a template or build a picture. So fortunately, we live in a world that is so full of possibility that it's pretty easy to find great templates. And I'll give you some places to look in the next slide. So you've gotten, by step 2, you've gotten a picture that you think works, that you think explains it, as you could at least talk about it based upon that picture. Then steps 3 and 4 are important. You want to show it to other people without telling them about it. Just say, hey, would you take a look at this? It's supposed to show, and then just the general headings of all the illustrations I showed. It's supposed to show a process. Can you tell me what you get out of this picture? It's supposed to show something. And then ask them, give them a hint. It's supposed to show a complex interaction. What would you say about it? Until you can get where their answer's closer to what you had in mind. And you keep rinsing and repeating until you come up with something where a number of people said something a little close to what you wanted. And then you know you've got a picture that is useful. So where do you get those ideas? Obviously, you're going for pictures, your field, your lab, other things around you. Our fields often talk about things in a certain way. For instance, in computer science, if then do these different things happen, the shapes have different meaning, stay within the parameters of how your field diagrams. For a number of us, it could be as simple as Microsoft Smart Art. Smart Art is pretty good, and it says these are the ones that talk about relationship, and these are the ones that talk about other things. And then for me, it's almost always relationships. So I go through them and I think about what I'm trying to do, and I see whether or not any of those work best. Generally, with diagrams, it is not a great time to be creative if a more standard one would work. So if you're faced with the difference between a Venn diagram and a funnel with some balls on it, go for the Venn diagram if it really works. Go to the more conservative diagram in general, because conservative means it's been shown to a broader audience, and more people will have a likelihood of innately understanding what the picture represents. There are also great possibilities out there. Miro is useful for anybody who's going to project or use anything online. Lucidchart, and then I recently found Venngage, and I've given you some links. So the last webinar of the year in our 15-minute studies, and it's the first time I've actually finished before the 15 minutes was up. I tended to run on. So just those of you who are in the room, oh, a question about process just came into the 15 minutes. Would you build this only after you've completed your research, or can it be used when you're working, when you're writing? I diagram all the way along. I believe that it helps me sort out my words. If I can diagram it, I can tell it to you in language. Could be just the way my brain is wired, but so definitely do it all the way along. And I think there's a huge advantage to you if you're in the research pre-proposal stage, that you diagram your research study and your methodology and where you're going to get stuff, and you show that to your supervisor before you, or at the same time as you show them your words. Because what happens when you're examining somebody else's words is that you get very critical of whether or not everything is in line. If you've given me a picture, I know where you want to go. And then I can judge your words according to whether they get me there. Do you see the advantage to a picture? So I'm very much in favor of every researcher diagramming all the way along. And thanks whoever put this question in. It was just what I wanted to say. No more questions, although if you're typing, I'll get to them as they go on either side. It is wooclap.com/15 minutes. As soon as I tell us what's happening next in Doctoral Net, we'll go there, and I'll just spend the rest of my time answering your questions about anything in your graduate process. I'm not, it doesn't have to just be about this topic. And once again, the slides had those examples, and you could drill into what the person was talking about and why they were using that particular mode. Just to say what's upcoming tomorrow, Professora Maria had to change her presentation on posters to change the date because Big Marker wasn't working. So it's tomorrow. And research boot camps are upcoming, and I thought it would be good to just hold 30 minutes tomorrow night, Irish time, different time, 2 hours after our normal time of doing these, for anybody who thinks they might be interested in either a pre-proposal summer, or a summer focused on their pre-proposal, or a summer focused on if they have data or they're just about to have data, and how to finish. So 2 major portions of this work. It does not matter if you are doing a dissertation or you're doing multiple chapters. It's the same conversation. It does not, in the ways that we will talk about it, and when it's not the same conversation, we'll pull it apart. And it has weekly accountability built into it to hold your feet to a fire that can help you get done. So I'll tell you all about it tomorrow night. My time. Might be tomorrow morning, your time. Also, I want to say upcoming next week, just a few things, or later on this week, no, next week. We have one more community this coming Thursday, is the if you already have your data and you're working to finish and you have outstanding issues you would like to talk about, or you just like to hang out with other people who are in the same space, see what comes up. Thursday is a post data community, and then Friday is this coming Friday. Yes, I'm off on my calendar. Let me look. No, next Friday. Oh, yeah, this coming Friday. There it is. This coming Friday means I have to do my homework quickly. Adrian is working with those of us who are new to Citavi, want to use Citavi. It's a very robust and interesting system for managing our literature. And so there's some exercises that we all have to do beforehand. They are linked in the big marker screen that tells you about Citavi. There's a link. Good. Okay, so that's what's upcoming. You can tell I'm so busy, I'm not quite sure what day it is anymore. Back to wooclap.com/15 minutes. We have some excellent things coming in about diagramming. Let me share them with you. And that is here. Okay. For my dissertation proposal topic, I had a hard time looking for the literature, articles, and resources for effective practices for online programs. Most literature I found are about online course design. Do you have any suggestions where to find the current literature on effective practices for online programs? I think the problem with looking for literature sometimes is that we have a very clear idea of what we want to, what we're looking for. And if our finite focus doesn't exactly match the finite focus of what's being published or what has been recently published, we only get bits and pieces out of it. I totally agree with you on that. And I'm going to suggest that you may not find effective practices for online programs, but you will find best practices for things that are generically similar. So I guess my bottom line is, have you thought about expanding your conceptual map of what you're talking about? So online programs is one section. The online portion of that, the delivering things in the best way possible online. So best practices for online education, you probably can find. And then you might have another one. So overlapping topics that don't agree will have little sections that, like, it's a 3-part Venn diagram. And I'll just show you that we have many slides on this because I've talked about it in the 15 minutes on conceptual and theoretical frames. Let me see, I think I'm about 3. Okay, here. So I mapped in one of my conversations this term, I mapped a conceptual frame starting at the end, looking at the people in a lit review and then going backwards to say what was their conceptual frame. So you might have people that are pretty close and you might do this exercise. Looking at their references, you pick out from their titles kind of generic, big overarching topics that they're on about. And then you see that the places they overlap create a little bit more synergy with your effective practices for online programs. And then there's a sweet spot in the middle, which you come up with. Because actually, if there is no current literature specifically on effective practices for online programs, you have just found the gap that your work will fill. So those of you who are going, I can't find lit on this, expand first, see what you can do, and then see whether or not in reality your work will be the beginning of that centerpiece.